Hello and welcome to Wikipedia Weekly Network, here where Albin Larsson and I, Jan usually are editing Wikidata live. Hello, Albin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jan?
I'm great as well. And today I think we're actually streaming better into the Telegram group. We had some troubles last time because I was pushing the buttons the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah. And I said usually because we're not doing the usual stuff today. What are we doing today?
No. Because of the Wikidata reuse days, which have you watched much of it, Jan?
I watched quite a lot. I missed some, but today I think I've seen 3 sessions. So I spent most of the day looking.
Right. And it's continuing next week a couple of days as well.
Yeah, until
right?
Thursday, I think.
Yeah, so it's 1.5 week showcasing reuse and various reuse cases of Wikidata, both product and like technology. And we are kind of doing the technology side today. Because we are showing off something called Snowman, which is like a site generator which takes SparkQL, for example, from Wikidata, and generates web pages from it, but with a bit of HTML and CSS, which we usually use to build websites. And for example, this is how Jan and I built govdirectory.org, where we collect government agencies and data about them. And this is an open framework. It's open source, so anyone can use it. And we felt like showcasing it. So that's what we're going to do. Maybe we do some editing in case we find something that's odd. It's usually that rabbit hole. But to begin with, we are just going to try to make a website.
Yeah. And we said in the description that we were going to exemplify it with GovDirector, but after we thought about it a little bit and also saw what other people were doing in these sessions, we thought like it might be more fun to actually go into the weeds of it and do more live coding so people get an understanding, because you have seen us working on the Gov directory before, so you sort of know what it is and what it can do. And by showing us doing something else, you can also still figure out how it actually works. So it will be more like a show and tell rather than just a show.
Indeed. And if in case you want to know more about Gov Director and a ton of different civic tech projects, there's actually a session later in the reuse days where we will talk about it.
Yes, so that's going to be on Wednesday evening.
Yeah.
But now let's go into Snowman, I think.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump straight into it. Here's the GitHub page for Snowman. And let's see if we can get a banner up for that link as well. There we go. And it's a static site generator for SparkQL backends. And in practice, it means that you write SparkQL and it outputs a web page after a bit of trickery and work. So I'm gonna jump into a code editor, but I've already Snowman installed, so I can type Snowman here. So just to see, hey, it's installed. It says a couple of things about what we can do with it. It got a couple of commands like build, which creates a web page from a directory. It got a bit of cache inspection, help, new, server, version. We're going to use new today to create a new part. We're going to use build to build a website. And we are going to run the server to be able to view that website. So I'm going to type Snowman new and ask for help to see what can we do when we do Snowman new. And we see that we got 2 flags. One is the help one I just ran to display this information. And the other one is the directory, which essentially says this should be the name of the directory where I want to create my new project. So I'm going to do that. And I want to call this Snowman project, because that's simple. And it created a new folder here, which I can see with a bunch of files. It got a default query, which just selects pretty much anything, but use 10 of it. It got some static files, some templates, which is like HTML, which is filled by the query, as well as a bit of configuration. by default, and a file connecting templates to the queries, so they know that that query and that template are connected. But I actually got some instruction here as well when I ran this, so I can move into the, let's see if I'm in the right spot here. So I can move into the directory Snowman project, and here I can then build a page. So this is just a bunch of files that doesn't really do much. It's some HTML and some queries, that's it. But if I run Snowman build, it builds a page quickly. It found 2 views, as it's called, and it ran 1 query, and it rendered 2 pages. So we can see we got a new site directory here, and this is technically a fully working web page. So I'm going to start that web page, so to say, Snowman server, and I need a space there. There we go, and it's serving a web page. So I'm gonna go ahead and view that. So here we go. We got a page. I'm very much zoomed in now, but I think that's good for the stream. So it says you just generated your first web page with Snowman. Your endpoint is set to, and it's set to Wikidata actually, because that's the default example. And it got a couple of getting started links here. I'm actually going to open the template function reference because that's always super useful. Let's open the examples as well in case I need them. And here's actually some data from that query we had. So it used the first 10 triplets it find in Wikidata in case we run it, and it says when it was generated and with what version down here. So we don't want this. I have been looking a little bit for inspiration in Wikidata, and I kind of feel like writing a query for artworks, in particularly for artwork from the Swedish National Museum, actually because I'm rather familiar with the data, so I think that's a neat thing to work today. So because Snowman is like based on a query and just renders it like this, the first thing we're gonna do is actually make a query in the query service and retrieve some data we want to be able to make pages about. So I'm gonna do select star, as I usually do when I'm getting started on something. I want an item. I want it to be in the collection of National Museum. Here we go. VD. Can I get the Swedish one? Here we go. I want to actually also like limit this amount so we don't build thousands of pages directly, because we might run into like data issues and do a bunch of editing then, which I would like to avoid. So
yes, and there's quite a lot of paintings as well.
So I want to ensure that it has certain data like creator, inception, and a couple of things like that. So I got inception here, and that, let's call that created time, and VDD creator. And I think we need to select the right one if I remember right. P170. And we can call that creator. Like that. And I also want to ensure they got a triple IF link to limit things even more. So that is, I don't know that in my head, triple IF manifest. I'm going to call that triple IF for now. Let's see what that returns. To see 5,000. Let's
still a lot.
Let's limit it still, just to speed things up later along the road. Let's do filter, and maybe we do year, created time, and that should be like, I like all paintings, and we can like ensure that they are in the public domain.
You could go with the copyright status public domain.
I could as well. But then I couldn't limit this as much as I would like to. So this is an informal way of doing.
Yes. Oh, that would be pretty sure if 1500. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I don't want like super early either, because then it can also be like
strange things.
Yeah, strange things is one way to say it. I was looking for another word, but didn't find one myself. So created time should be bigger than 1300s.
Wait. You have them on the same direction. So smaller than 1500, perhaps.
Yes, that one is the one I should have.
Yeah.
Don't know your way around.
Right. So that's a narrow.
Here we go.
Right. That would be good.
So let's inspect this data a little quickly. We quickly see this. We got this is what happens if you have like a unknown value, or there are a couple of option ones. It's unknown value and one or two things more. So I used not to deal with that. I'm gonna have that removed as well, and I think we can do that with the filter. So I think not Wikibase is some value. Could that be?
Oh, we don't have a autocomplete.
It doesn't have autocomplete for that one.
No.
Let's see if that was the right one, or if it's some value. That seems to be right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start off with this query, like to have something to work with, but I'm gonna add labels. So creator label. I actually want everything here. Let's do item label. Let's do creator as well. Hello, the query builder once again.
Oh, now I got an idea for a little user script here. If you could have user scripts in Wikidata Query Service, something
Right.
then added all the things you have selected and the labels for it on that row.
Oh yeah. Something I would really enjoy would be if like it could suggest when you have a label. So if I type creator and use autocomplete creator, it would also autocomplete creator label because it's so likely.
Yeah.
I want the year as well, created time. But I want to select it as the year. I could actually bind it because I use year everywhere, but I'm a little lazy. So I'm gonna do year created time as created year. And I think I got everything there. No, I actually need the label source. And to ensure I got everything, and here we want English and then fall back to Swedish. I think that makes most sense today. Let's run it. It looks solid. So this is what we're gonna make a web page from to begin with. So I'm gonna make the terminal a little smaller. I hope I'm not too much zoomed in, but I'm gonna head into the queries folder because this is the query that our page is based upon, so to say. So if I just replace that to begin with, and we're gonna try to build the web page here and see what happens. I imagine it will break. Issuing the query might take a second. And it actually said it rendered things, but let's actually run the server once again and have a look at that page and see. We have this table since before. Let's see if that, no. So it tried to look for those variables, but didn't find them. So that's gone now. But it also means that we can just change that template. So if I go to the index template, and I'm gonna try to give myself a little bit more space here. Maybe I can't give myself that much. But I'm gonna remove most of the things we don't need. I'm gonna have a header here, which is just gonna be artworks. And I'm gonna set the title here. And you might see that we use like define title and define content, and we got like a template known as base here. And that's because we got like a layout which provides a lot of boilerplate that we reuse on any page. So that's why that's like that. But then we got a range here, essentially a loop. And this actually loops the results from the query that's connected with this template. So currently we are working with the template index.html and the query index.rq, rq because it's SparkQL. And it will just loop the results there, just as we see in the tables. So if we remember what we named the variables here, we had, oh wait, can't remember actually. We got, for example, the item label, which we of course want to display here. And I copied way too much. I just want to copy the item label today. Thank you very much. And we got the created year and the creator, for example. And we could like modify that query to give us just about anything.
Creator label.
Exactly. And let's see if that does the trick, or if we missed something. I'm gonna build the site, run the server, move back here and click reload. So we got artworks, St. George and the Dragon in the 1400s by John Baggerat. And we got a couple of artworks. Let's see here. We got one, a bunch of them. Let's see. Is that as many as we got from the SparkQL query? It should be.
Could make the table header a little bit nicer, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
But I'm realizing now that with this query, we actually only get 12 results. And I think we're going to work with a little bit more than 12 results. And here's a neat thing if you make like big pages. So when I ran this 2 times now, it actually didn't make the query another time because it noticed that, hey, this is the exact same query as when you built the site last time. And then it won't execute the query if you don't tell it. So I'm gonna make this modification here that we're going from the 1500s to the 1600s. And let's see, that should be a bit of an increase, 91. That's a little bit better, I believe. But still easy for us to debug in case something goes wrong. And if I rerun this, now you might notice that it will, if I run this, it will be stuck on that issuing the query for another second because now it noticed that the query changed, so I need to run it.
It was so quick you couldn't see it with your eyes.
Yeah, it still was quick. I imagine because we used to run it in the query service, it will probably be cached. Here we got a little bit more. But as Jan said, we should really change the labels here. So let's go back to the HTML template here and see. Let's call that artwork, just the name of the artwork. And here we got year of creation and the creator. We could call that artist because I'm quite sure we're only working with that. And if I would update this, it would update the table. But let's see. We don't only want like a boring list. We want a page for each item, I believe, where we can see the image and so on. So we want to create a new view where each artwork gets its own page. So I'm gonna remove this unused view and instead create a new one. And this time we actually, instead of having a view which uses all of the rows, which we can loop like in that one, we want to create a page for each row. And we can do that by in this output. So we can, for example, pretend that we want this to be outputted on /artwork /QID and use the QID as the URL, so to say, or the name of the page. So I can say artwork / and here I can point actually to SparkQL variable. So imagine we got a variable called QID here. I could say like that, because then it would output for each row in the results. It would write a file to artwork, QID or the name of the QID variable, and /index.html. And the index here is just, hey, put this in the root of the directory. But I still want to work with the same query. I don't want to specify a new one, but I want a new template as well. I want artwork.html, like that. So in my template folder, I'm gonna create artwork.html. And I'm gonna be a little bit lazy. I'm gonna copy the part from the index.html and put it in here because it contains things like the using the layout here. But what we now did in the views here means that we need a QID variable, which we can use here. And I don't think our query returns one of those.
Not yet.
So, not yet. And I happen to believe that there is an example in the documentation here which actually uses Wikidata. So I'm gonna copy paste that. Yeah, we got this classic bind replace the string as QID. And I'm gonna copy that one. So if I paste it in here, you might see how it works. It actually says work, but we got item, and it will turn that into string, remove the URI's prefix, and give us QID. So I'm gonna select it up here, QID. And if we go back to our artwork template, we now can access the values for each row. So instead of doing a table here, we could, for example, work with the label of the work as the main header here, for example. So that would be work. No, it would be item.
Item label.
Item label, we call that. And I also want that as the page title. So let's just run that. That should simply give us a page for each artwork with just the header as the template there. Let's see if we can run that. So that would be Snowman build to make the page and Snowman server to run it. And we still doesn't have like a link to it. So let's see if we have a QID easily as selectable here. We can copy this one. And then we decided that the URL should be artwork/QID. So we can see that, yay, we got that header. But we can, of course, do more than that. We can access the author. So let's write a bit of sentence here. So we can, for example, need the name of the creator here. So that would be creator label. And you might notice we are just using the same variable names as we did in the query. So we can write a bit of a sentence here using the variables we created. So the creator created this artwork and then we can do the year. And I think we call that created year.
Yeah.
So there we go. So if I build this and directly run the server, that it's already done, load, and then we can see John Baggert created this artwork in 1480. Of course, looking at the Wikidata data model, there could, of course, be that this has a precision or something like that, which you could care about in the SparkHelp, but for this demo, we're skipping that. Okay, but then, of course, if we would go back to the main page here, we want to be able to click this and go to each of the pages. So let's jump back into that template and let's write a link there. Oh, that's kind of nice autocomplete. Artwork / QID. There we go. And then the item label. There we go. And then I can remove this first row. And let's see if I can get my focus right. Run it. Here they turn blue. We got a link, which goes to the correct page. That's nice. Now I want images on pages. That's the next step. And we could use comments here and like select that image and such. But I'm gonna use IIIF instead because they are just very accessible for this particular data set. And we don't really have the benefits yet of federated SparkQL to commons. So I'm gonna jump into the artwork template because before the title, I want an image. So I'm gonna create the image element here, just like that, and do select something. But if we look at the SparkQL, the IIIF we selected here, it's a JSON URL, and I need the image. And IIIF happens to follow a very clear pattern, so that's not the big deal. And we could do like a replace here, as we do with the QID, not in this one, but in the one we actually use. However, I'm going to show a different way because we actually have a ton of functions for doing things directly in Snowman templates. So I can actually do replace here and say IIIF, because that's what we are calling the variables we select, and then say I want to replace this part with this part, and I want to do that once. That's the type of function. And in case you missed it early on, but when we generated, we actually got a link to like the function reference here, which is shows a ton of examples on how to use this type of function. So I want to replace the end of the URL in the IIIF, which I think is manifest.json. And if I know my IIIF right, it should be fol /fol /0 / default.jpeg in this case. And I'm hoping that does the trick. Let's see. And once again, it builds super quickly because it doesn't really run the SparkQL. If it doesn't need to, let's go to the page, reload that. We got a broken image. Okay, so that URL didn't turn out correctly. Oh, I'm missing a slash. Yes, that's correct. So I'm replacing /manifest, but I can actually just do it like this instead. And run that, and we should now have an image. Here we got an image. And this is way too large. And we need to make that smaller. And we got a static file actually for that, the CSS file. It got a bit of default styling from the example page, but I'm just going to build upon it. I want to change the image to not be that high. So let's see if I can go in here and do display block. I also want it to be centered, and I want it to have a max height. And let's do that 25 rem. And let's rebuild the page and reload. And we got a much easier. I can actually zoom out a little on this page, something like that. And that's great. We got a kind of nice artwork page here. However, we are still just using like one query, and I'm thinking something that would be nice to have would be like clickable years, so that we can go into each year and see the artwork for that specific year and continue to navigate everything. So let's add pages for years. And I actually want to start that by doing a query. So I could do like a loop of the year in this query and build pages from that, but then it would be like repeatedly the same year. So I'm gonna start a new query from this one. So something to think about when one uses like Wikidata plus Snowman is that Wikidata's data model is very open. So I actually want to keep this part to ensure that we don't get years outside of this initial selection. So I want to keep my filter and such. So let's see. There we go. For year, I just want a list of years essentially because I'm going to select the various artwork somewhere else. But then I want to select distinct. Distinct. Did I get it right? I did. And I want created time as year. I believe. So here we go. As. And let's do an order here as well, it seems. Order by year. There we go. And let's double check that that just returns a list of years. That's all I need, I believe. Because I can like make the URLs here for the year be like year / and just the year. Because that should be URL safe, all of them. We got 51 different ones here. So I'm gonna create a new query. RQ, there we go. And to actually have something to render, we need both a template and a view defined. So I'm gonna start by defining the view here so we can do something cool with it. So we can call this under year, and the variable we want to use for URL would be year and still /index.html. But here we want to replace the query with years, I believe that I called it. That would have made sense, yes. And we need a template. Let's call it year. That should be it. And if I would run this without a template existing, I would imagine I would get an error. Fail to discover views, error, unable to find a template file year. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm gonna create that file. Year.html. And once again, I'm gonna copy like the layout here from another page. So item label, I'm just gonna replace that with year for now. So everything we're gonna have would be like a title here. Year. This wouldn't return anything because here we later want to list the various artworks. So let's not build this yet. Let's start actually by going into the index and create this like year link. So here, td and ref and do /year/ here we want to put the created year. I'm gonna copy it from here. / because that's the URL, and we use the so we get that navigation directly. Let's run it. Issuing years, it's gonna take a second, but once it ran it the first time, it got it. Still no errors. I'm hoping we will get some errors, so we might do some debugging. So let's see, do we have anything that, yeah, for example, here I can see we got 2 of the same, so I should be able to click that. And we just get the year. But now I want to list all of the artworks with that year. And there could be multiple ways I could do this. There usually is that when you build web pages with Snowman, because you can put logic in the SparkQL or in the templates. It's like not very opinionated on that. But looking at the year here, I could write a query here and call that query with the year as a parameter, because you can pass like parameters to, but that would issue one query for each year. So instead, I want to actually I think I want to do it this way. I think I want to like access the index.rq query once again and loop it and just check if the year is the same as the year for that query. We're gonna start and see what happens. So I'm gonna be a little bit cheaty. I'm gonna copy this loop here. Actually, the entire table, because I want the table to look the same. So I'm gonna close some pages, artwork I don't need, the views I shouldn't need, but see. And if I would run this, it would essentially doesn't have anything to loop, so it wouldn't be able to render this. So instead here, I want to render the result of this query, index.rq. And again, I can run like a function here from Snowman's large library of functions. And it has a function to run queries inside of templates. So I could do index.rq. And that would actually give me access to, see if we can actually run this like it is, I believe. But we don't do any filtering here. So it should now on each like year page, it's just everything. And we still, so we got the same big list. And once again, it doesn't run query once for each page because it knows that it's the same. So let's see. So we want to have like a if here. And yeah, oh, it says something. If equal to, that's almost right. So I need an additional end here. So if the created year is equal to the current year, but however, inside of this range, we can't access year with dot like this, I don't think, because we use the dot for each of the rows in the range here. So we actually need to create a variable here, a name variable like that. Oh, and it shouldn't have auto-completed that last part. So year is equal to year, and then I want to compare created year to the outer variable, because otherwise we would have like a conflict where the dot year and the dot for each of the rows would be in conflict. But here I can set this one like this, and this way you got access to things like math inside of Snowman and all kinds of things.
I'm just going to answer a question here from the chat because it's a very good one from Daniel. Is there anything magical with HTML, or could you use this for other text-based outputs like LaTeX or chart in SVG, or perhaps even Wikitext? And there is nothing magical. So in our Gov directory, you can even see how we generate an SVG with our latest statistics based on this.
Yeah.
So there's an example over there, but it's just a thing in a file.
Exactly. It can work. It is rather smart because it got some security aspects when you do HTML, but you can actually say, don't care about security. Run this anyway on text files, JSON files, and just about anything. I use it to build some static APIs, for example, which is outputs JSON files. I'm hoping that this if is enough here. So if the year of the current page matches the created year for each of the artworks, only then should it output. Let's hope that I got that right the first time. I'm still hoping for a bit of errors. Oh, it didn't run with any errors. Let's see what happens if we reload. We only got the ones with the right year of creation, the 1500s. That doesn't necessarily need to be a link, but okay. So if we go back here, let's give it a reload for the sake of it, and goes to another year here. We only got those. That's nice. And because there aren't that many like artworks for each page, we could render all the images. And we could kind of do the same thing for the creator here. We could use like their QID to do another page. But let's have a look at just how this works. So we got on each page, we got this generated on, and it sets the Snowman version. This is because inside of that layout, which we are reusing, and you can actually use multiple layouts in case you want. But we got this includes footer.html because you can include like things you want to reuse all the time. And inside of this, we actually got a bit of a snowman template, which generates like this was updated now when you build it. You can get that date and you can get the snowman version again directly in templates. I'm thinking we want to add some links on the artwork pages. I want to add links for like the created year here, so we can actually go to the year, but also links back to the National Museum. I think that's a nice thing to do. But let's start by linking this one up, and I'm gonna go actually to the index.html here and copy the link I got here. No need to write that once again, so I'm gonna make that into a link. There we go. And what if you click on the image and that opens the Natural Museum? I think that would be neat. But then we need to select the URL or ID of some kind. So let's go to an artwork page actually, like that, and look it up in Wikidata to see where can we find a link in a neat way. I guess we have some type of external identifier, or I'm pretty sure. So here we go. We could select National Museum Sweden artwork ID and build a link from that. That would be neat. So we could write it in here, but the query service, auto completion, and everything, it's amazing. So we're gonna take advantage of that.
Yes.
And VDT. There we go. That's why this is great. NM ID, I'm gonna call that. And again, here I could like build the entire URL and just access it, or I could like merge it in Snowman. It depends on the project. I have seen all of it. So let's run it to ensure that we get. We don't, because I need to remember to select it. There we go. 91. There we got the NMID. So I'm gonna copy this, replace this, and now when I rerun this, it will have noticed that, hey, this changed. Let's actually run the query. Of course, the data could change, so you would like it to run. Then you can tell the Snowman command to run it. But let's see, we want to add it here in the artwork template. And I said I want the image to be clickable. Not sure if that's like best practice, but for this demo, let's do it that way. There we go. And we need to move the image like inside of the link for this to work. So it requires a bit of HTML knowledge, but as we realized when we answered the question, you can use this for kind of things. We use this, as John mentioned, to generate like a SVG image where we just update some numbers. We need to have that like link as well, and that is nmid dot nmid, and we want the actual URL, and I'm just gonna copy paste it from over here. And I wonder if the order of the parameters matters here. I don't think so. So if I do something like that, I could probably get away with the URL like that. Let's see if that just works. Yes. Great. So if I copy paste it, that looks correct, but it doesn't got. Sadly, I removed it like that. It should be correct. Don't think it's HTTPS. Sadly. Let's run it, and now it's gonna be stuck on the query for a while because it runs it. But once done, I click this now. I get to the page. That's neat. So let's see, IDs. We could of course do like creator pages and maybe not only display the artworks in a list there, but also display their image. That would be rather neat.
Did you clean up the years page?
Let's go to year page. They look like this.
That's yes, you don't need the year of creation column there. That's redundant.
Because indeed, that's let's go and remove that. And that would be the year exactly.
Nice.
That's nice, and I could clarify this as well. That and should be ones in. And I need to rebuild it just like that. It's already done. Just reload it. And I didn't remove the header, but it won't be much of a problem anyway. There we go. So again, we haven't really gone into the styling of things here, but that's a little bit out of scope for this use case. We're using the default CSS here. And yeah, I wanted to do one more thing I realized. So if I get back to the main artwork page, I want to show some more capabilities here. We can see that most titles are in English, but we should have a couple of ones in Swedish, I imagine. This one is in Swedish, for example. So to make that work with things like screen readers and stuff, we need to be able to tell a browser which language it's in it. And because Snowman is working not just with plain JSON data or things like that, but with actually RDF and SparkQL, something we can do, and we, for example, do on Gov directory when select labels, are to being able to set the language for things, lang. And because item label is actually not a string, it's a multilingual, it's a string with a label, language label, so to say, because that's how RDF works. We can actually access that in Snowman by doing something like, oops, that's not the right thing. If I copy the item label in here, this could be both in Swedish and English because that's what we say in the query. But we can actually tell the browser what language is in it by saying lang, because it's not a string, it's a multilingual string, so to say, or a language literal, to use RDF terms. And we can access that. So if I run this and we reload this and actually view the page source here, we can see small. We can see here that it says language English. And
you can't really see it.
We can't really see it. Now here we go. So it says language English here, which is wrong. But I imagine here that it's not wrong here. It's actually wrong in Wikidata. So let's have a look at this item here. Because I happen to know this is a bug very common in this data. Yeah, we can see here that the English label here is not in English. And this is because of a very old data error in the National Museum database. So sorry, that shouldn't be there. Because sometimes they actually have a real English label, but in the National Museum data which has been imported here, English is almost always by default set to Swedish. The same with German in their database. So sadly we got a case like that, but it showcases the capability anyway, I believe. Now I happen to click on the image. Right. We said creator pages. Can we manage that in 10 minutes? I think so. So we would then do pretty much exactly as the years. The year query, but just do it with selecting the creator instead.
No, not as here. You can remove the entire.
Not as here. And here I could actually select a little bit more of information for me to use. I could use like the description here would be useful, like were they just an artist or did they do something more? And of course the label. I want the QID to being able to do that page thing. So I want creator description. And I said the QID, and I'm gonna copy what we wrote here, I believe, or which we copied from yet another place. And again, when I work with Wikidata and Snowman, I always like keep something like this to keep the scope. And we don't want order by year either.
No, and you want to replace the creator there rather than the item.
And there we go, indeed.
Yeah, and here's the nice thing with Wikidata where we have unique identifiers, so there's no risk in using QID for different types of things because we know they're going to be unique.
Indeed, and there are like various strategies in most data sets got some type of safe identifier like that, but sometimes you might need to do things like hash things. So you take a string value and then you turn that into like a URL safe hash. But let's not do that here. And I think that query should be it. Let's see. So we got 60 different for our 91 artworks. But this is a nice one. So let's create one. Creators.rq. There we go. We still need a new view. Gonna base it off this year one and do creator QID because that's what we're using here once again. The query are creators, and we're gonna make a template called creator. That makes sense to me. So that's nice. Let's do a new template. Creator.html. There we go. Again, I'm gonna copy something. Let's copy this one. It should be a good starting place. We want the creator label as the title. We want this as the header. And let's that's gonna print an error because we don't got a year, but author-wise,
What columns do you want?
That's true. I want the year, I imagine.
Artwork and year?
Artwork and year makes sense. We could actually go and copy that from the index. So that would be the two first ones. There we go. There we go. And we don't want to compare the years anymore here. We want to create like the QID of the creator with the QID of the creator for each work. So for now, let's pretend that that's not a problem to ensure that what we currently got works. We're gonna just compare Q to Q. So it's gonna print all again. And oh, the given query could not be found. Creators.rq. That's because I called it creator. Let's call it creators instead then. And now it's issuing the query and rendered a bunch of creator pages. I'm gonna copy this link here actually too, so we can use it. going to the artworks, going to /creator, and it printed all the artworks as because of this if is equal to QQ. Let's first actually do the description. So we can just do it like this. I'm assuming everything got a description now, but I could do one of those if I don't think all of it has, but having an empty paragraph here doesn't do much harm.
I think there was one that was empty.
Yeah, exactly. So we can live with that for the demonstration here. The best thing would be, of course, to add a description.
Yeah, creator description.
Yes, I got multiple things wrong there. Creator. And let's skip the language as well, as it was just one. That's it to begin with. That would generate the description as well. But then we want to do this query here, and it gets a little bit more complex here. We want the QID here of the creator to begin with. So let's put that into a variable. So that would be, let's call that creator QID. No, let's call it QID. Oh, QID, because that's the global scope. So there we go. I want a space there. And then I'm currently having the QID, but I think in our like index query for artworks, we're just selecting creator and not this replaced version. So we can't compare them directly. And I could either redo it here, like with a replace, or I could do it in a different way to showcase that way. So let's see if I can get this on the first. So I want to I actually want to do it inside of the loop here. I want to just get the creator QID from all of this. So I'm going to do another variable, creator QID, which I want to create. And let's see, did I get that correct in my, oops, that's not it. Let's try it this way. And I want to, again, just like with IIIF, we use the replace. But because Snowman speaks RDF and not in like strings and such, we are actually not having like the creator we select is a URI and not a string. However, Snowman's template language is smart enough to, whenever a string function like replaces gets a URI, it turns it into a string. So we can actually run it directly.
Very forgiving.
It's rather forgiving. The first versions wasn't. So we can do replace, and I want to replace dot creator. And inside of that, I want to replace the Wikidata URI, or the first part of it, http wikidata.org/entity/ and I want to have that replaced with nothing, so I'm going to leave that empty, and I want to do that once. And if I'm correct now, we should have the QID of the creator from the creator page as QID, and the creator QID as the one from here. Let's see if I got all the syntax right. So here it would be, let's do QID and creator QID in the next one. So if those two are equal. Let's see if we get an error. I'm still hoping for an error somewhere. Yes. Undefined variable QID. And I think that's because I got the syntax wrong here, and it should actually be like this. We could actually double check that in one of our files that uses that. The year one uses that logic. Yes, we create a variable with colon and an equal sign. Let's see if that does the trick. Oh, still a crash. Error calling equal incomparable types for comparison. So let's see what happens here. Let's ensure that we got this part right and just put a bit of protection in signs like that. So it essentially says that this might be a string, but this isn't. It might be URI or something. But I don't know why that is. I have actually no clue, which is terrifying in a way when you code live. But let's print out both of those variables, like QID, and then do another one. Let's do pipe here and give us creator QID, and it did a bunch of additional text here I didn't want. There we go. So that should render that before, and I'm actually gonna go up here and like explicitly delete the site. It's not deleted every time you run build, because for really large sites, when you build things with Snowman, you don't want to rebuild like Gov directory thousands of pages. I think the largest sites using Snowman is 200,000 pages. And then you have a lot of cases where you don't want to rebuild everything because it's going to take an hour or two. So you can actually build just parts of it, so it doesn't delete that. So if I run this now, we're still going to have the same crash because I haven't solved the issue. But I'm printing out QID and creator QID. And because this site folder is just all the templates.
My hero also points out there's a www in the entity prefix.
Great. And there we got the result. There we got a bug, I believe. Let's see if we can see that, spot that in here. If I go down here, I have told it, yeah, we can see that it printed out an entire URI because of the missing VVV. The replace didn't run. It had nothing to replace. So that's it. The types were different. It was still a URI because that replace never were able to do the trick. So let's do it that instead. And I'm gonna replace my piece of debugging here and rerun this. We still got an error. Incomplete types again. So I'm gonna bring back my debugging and see what's going on. Maybe still something is wrong here. I would imagine if there is anything. Let's see. I want to delete the site one again. So there we go. And I'm going to move in the site one, which is, for example, the file you would use for publishing things. And creator, we can see that there is just one file because it tries to render it all the way. And we can see that we got like a QID and a QID. But the thing is here, I believe that I just realized, you might have noticed before that I'm talked about how things in Snowman isn't necessarily string because it's working with plain RDF. But replace, for example, actually returns a string, but the QID here is still a RDF literal. So what if we call string, because we can still manually convert this to a string. So we can say the QID string should be compared to this creator QID. So let's see if that does the trick, or could maybe, that did the trick. So we had one part where it was RDF literal and a raw string. So we now have creator pages, which should work. Let's see if that's the case as well. We got Hendrik here. We got painter and engraver because we added that description. We got the various artworks and creators. And for example, here we could add all kinds of things into that creators query, or even issue like queries inside of this. For example, for Gov director, for each government pages, which we generate in this way, we actually run queries from each of those to get the social media and things. But for this, we could add an image a little more, but I'm gonna leave that for now. It's having it illustrated. I want to showcase a couple more, like if you are looking into Snowman and the GitHub repository, There is a ton of examples for multilingual, how to work with that, how to work with non-HTML content. We have got a question about that. There is an example for that. How to work with things like sitemaps, which is also non-HTML content. There is an advanced Wikidata example. And configuration example, you can access things like environment variables and things like that in various ways. Inline queries, and that. And we have also showcased a couple of functions like replace, I think, and query. But if we go back to the main Snowman page and down to the function reference, there are a lot of them. You can do like multiplication and getting random numbers, get the type. So there is a lot of things like related to actual RDF, like getting the type of anything. You can convert things to your eyes if you have strings, your eye function. And yeah, it continues like that. You can use like queries with parameters. We ran like a query and the name of the query, but you can say query, the name of the query, and another variable which you want injected into the query. And you can access, as I said, environment variables. Yeah, it just continues like that. Split and join strings, and so on. So yeah, that's Snowman. A small example, generating a simple web page.
Yeah, and if you want to see a like live example, you can always go to govdirector.org and then click through to the GitHub. And one interesting aspect you can do while when looking at that repository is to see how we actually how it's developed over time. Like today, we're adding the ministries of Germany, so you can see the pull request that changes a query to pull that in. So because like this one, now we have 1300 to 1600, perhaps we want to expand that and so on. So you can sort of see,
yeah,
you don't need to do everything fully complete at once. Oh, it depends on what your use case is, I guess.
Indeed. And we actually got a very related question from Sandra here, which I'm gonna respond to. So I actually didn't show this, but I said that it doesn't rerun queries. But for example, when we want to rerun this on the interval, which we do for GovDirector, we do, however, run it not towards like when we do big builds and update everything, we don't run it towards the main SparkL endpoint because it makes thousands of SparkL endpoints. So I got a copy. But something one can do, or if you just want to update a part of it, is to use the Snowman cache command. Snowman cache. So we can see that there are 7 cache items from the various queries, and we actually got a folder here, which we can use. And this is like .snowman. It contains a lot of metadata around your website, mostly so that Snowman can be faster and smarter and just do the changes that is necessary. But if we go in here, we can actually see the data that the SparkL endpoint returned. And if we, for example, hey, we recently updated the years, this query is outdated, one thing we could do is to say Snowman cache and then the name of the query here, which would be years.rq. And I could run this and just look at what I'm looking at on the screen here. But I could also say invalidate. Hey, this is old, throw it away. And it removed this file now. And if I would like build Snowman once again, it would actually make that query. It was stuck there for a half a second. And that's how we run it on an interval. We invalidate various queries. We got various scripts for it to, for example, just invalidate a specific country and things like that. So that is how it works. We need an advanced Snowman session at the hackathon. Indeed, that would be great. There is a lot of advanced thing one can do with that. And I think GovDirector being an example, let's actually move over to GitHub just to show you how complex it can become. So if we go to gov directory, let's just head over to the website. This is actually generated with Snowman. This is the SVG, which is querying Wikidata to generate these numbers, and it's all Snowman. If I go to the website, which could be a rather complex template, for example, I think the statistics one is one because we combine various queries into statistics for each query, and then it can look something like this. We got, let's see if I don't zoom in even a little more. We, for example, count social things by doing a range, a loop, and working with strings, selecting country, doing a query, a parameter query here, we'll be passing country from the loop, and does an auto loop inside of the auto loop, and do a bit of math. And here we got like 3 nested queries, and it actually gets rather messy. But nothing of this is HTML. Like when I scroll, it's just logic. It's just us doing math, and down here comes the HTML. So it might be deeping down dive to look straight into the Gov directory as an example. But there is also the real Snowman example, which should be starter friendly. And there is also a bit of a tutorial inside of the Snowman review. So,
and I guess a follow-up on this question also, since we're not regenerating it all the time, we also have a live check on the specific page. Is there anything new data since this was rendered? So if someone edits Wikidata and add a Facebook account, it will still show on the site.
Yeah.
But that's not Snowman. That's JavaScript.
That's JavaScript. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have just been using Wikidata here, and Gov directory, which we also showcase, also uses Wikidata. But Snowman is built to work with any SparkQL endpoint. It's just a configuration file, which I should have showcased because it contains one very important aspect, which I have ignored today. And if we go into the configuration here, the default one, which we generated, here is just this Wikidata endpoint. But here is also the user agent. And it's super important actually because Wikimedia has a policy that you should always have a unique user agent so that if you're doing a lot of requests, they can contact you. So for example, I would, for example, do then for this one, example, Snowman project. And to ensure that the Wikimedia Foundation should be able to contact me in case something maybe goes wrong on my page and I make thousands of requests by a mistake, I would say user 98 and something like that. That's good practice. One should replace the default one. So with that, it sounds like a great idea to have a more advanced session for a hackathon. In the meanwhile, I hope someone will play around with this. I always enjoy when people show new things that they have built with Snowman. Right.
All right. Yes, and I think that's it for today. There's nothing more on the schedule for the Wikidata reuse day today. So you will have to check in back tomorrow if you want to follow. I think the first session is going to be at 11 o'clock UTC. And that's the Wikidata and AI for social good. I think that should be very interesting.
Indeed. Thank you for coming, Nicholas.
Yeah.
And thank everyone else for coming. And I hope you will see more of the reuse days. There are a lot of great sessions coming up.
I have so many ideas right now. Impressive. All right. Great. And as Nicholas said here, this time, I guess we don't say happy editing. We say happy coding.
Happy coding.